There
Aha.
you go. Sorry, I have no idea how to do these things. I might look like a stupid, but I guess my people know I look like a doff now and then, so they're kind of used to it. Let me just adjust this thing very quickly because we can see your face and not mine.
Okay.
There we
Assalamualaikum.
go. There. Walaikum salam. Welcome to, what do we call this? Hana's live on Instagram. I have no idea. This is the first time I'm doing this.
What do they call it? Hana with Hana.
Hanging with Hana H. Let's do it like, let's, I don't know. It's some spin to it. Anyway, welcome Zaid. Welcome to this live. And I must thank you for taking time up because I know how busy you are, single dad duties and stuff. Um, but yeah, what needs to be done needs to be done. And I know you're the only person who I can actually rope in last minute and do something crazy like this with me. So I don't know. Let's just get right into it, shall we?
Yes, definitely.
We are talking about addiction. Okay. And yesterday I did this, on Monday I started this discussion on Instagram, and I didn't anticipate the response that I got from there. And a lot of people said that this is a discussion that doesn't need to be read about, but rather spoken about. And I was actually surprised by a lot of people, family members that came through and reached out and said, we've been through this, and one specific person came to me and said, and DM'd me, and he said, can you please do us a favor and actually do a live about this, because this particular discussion is not spoken about openly. And of course, it made sense to me. It resonated with me. And trust you and I to talk about the controversial stuff. Trust us to talk about the stuff no one wants to talk about, and the stuff that makes everyone awkward. But is this an awkward discussion? Is this, and we don't want to normalize talking about drug addiction, right? That's not what we want to do. We want to normalize having discussions about things that are affecting our communities, our families, our people. And not just
Yeah.
our people, on a larger spectrum that is affecting everybody. And this particular discussion, this particular topic of drug addiction is not just affecting us, right? It's affecting everyone. It does not discriminate, does it? Yeah, maybe you just want to jump in there very quickly and let us know maybe who you are, what it is that you do, and what do you feel about this?
Okay. Well, those of you who don't know me, I'm Zaid Ismail. I'm a self-published author on mental health topics, and I also wrote a novel about the challenges that we face as average Muslims growing up in the South African Muslim community specifically. And I've got a very deep passion for wanting to raise awareness about what is that experience about. And I think today's topic about drug addiction is on point, because it's one of those things that we would like to believe is affecting other communities and not our community.
Yeah,
And the reason
yeah,
we do this is because we're so focused on that beautiful word that we call izzat. We want to protect our izzat, so we don't want to share our shame out in public, and we don't want people to know that we're experiencing this horrendous thing in our family and all of that. It's absolute nonsense, but we'll get back into that just now. So what I do, I also do life coaching as well, and I have a very different approach to it. Not going to go into the detail of that right now, but we need to take a different approach to how we've been looking at and trying to deal with these age-old problems that are literally tearing our community apart and our families apart. And drug addiction and, in fact, a number of other social ills, drug addiction being very much at the top of that list, is one of the big things that is the public secret. Everyone knows it's happening, but no one wants to talk about it.
Why? And I think I've asked you this on, when I raised this discussion on our platform of conversations with Muslim women. Why are we afraid to talk about this? Is it really just isn't, or are we just
It's our
afraid
distortion of
of?
isn't.
Yeah. Are we also afraid maybe of being stigmatized? Are we also afraid of sometimes
Well,
I don't know. Sometimes I think we're afraid of too much information.
no,
Sometimes I think we no. Sometimes I think we're afraid to talk about things that might give someone else too much insight about something. I don't know if I'm going way off. And you and I, we can very easily go into rabbit hole discussions, right? So please just rope me in and say, Hana, you're going too deep into this here. But sometimes I feel that we have this fear more than, yeah, it's a fear. It is a general fear. Fear for our izzat, fear for stigmatizations, fear for whatever.
And what's the underlying thing in all of that, right?
Okay, sorry, I think I lost you there for a quick moment. You were saying?
I was saying that the fear that we focused on, what actually drives that fear is that we're more concerned about how we appear in front of others rather than what it is that we actually stand for. And that's why, and stereotypes and stigmas and all of that nonsense, that's why that becomes part of the discussion. It's not because that is the problem. It's because we are more concerned about our standing, our social standing and stature, than we are about the reality of what we actually doing with our lives.
100%. I've been to some of these what do you call these initiatives or awareness that often, drug rehabilitation centers come forth, and they usually host them. And I've actually not seen one in a actually very long time. I have no idea why, but I always come to the, you can sense when people attend these things, you sense the apprehension, you sense the fear, you see them eyes darting everywhere. Who's looking at me? Who's watching me? Who's thinking, am I the addict? Do I have a child? And why am I even here in this particular space or in this particular environment? But you don't need to even be anyone who is dealing with addiction or have a loved one with addiction. You can just probably be just going there to educate yourself. So if, and Allah forbid, if you have to ever come across someone that might need your assistance, you have somewhat of the tools to help someone. Am I right? And I think this is why we're also raising this awareness. This is why we're also having this discussion. It's not just for people who are suffering with drug addiction. It is also for people, just to educate people, to give them a sense of, a sense of awareness for the topic, what to do, what not to do. And we probably won't even get into all of it. We probably won't even get into half of, because this is a loaded topic, but we can give them a little bit of a guideline. Right. So I'm going to start with something today. There's a hadith that comes to mind when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says in Sahih Bukhari, where he says, Kullu maskirin haram, every intoxicant is haram. Quickly, what is the definition of an intoxicant, and what can easily fall under that banner of intoxicants in terms of substances?
Okay, and just as a disclaimer, I'm not offering any tafsir or any kind of qualified interpretation of the hadith, but what I want to offer is what is the perspective of how we apply or interpret or relate to that hadith within the context of real life, right? Not from a fiqh perspective, from a real practical standpoint. And when we talk about intoxicants broadly is just anything that alters your state of mind. So anything that impairs your judgment could be considered an intoxicant. And the moment we start looking at it from that perspective, we're not talking about the substance anymore. We're not talking specifically about alcohol or drugs or a specific medication. We're talking about anything that drives you to the point where you lose touch with reality. And that could include something like gambling. It could include retail therapy. It could include reckless lifestyle choices, high adrenaline sports, all of these things that we use to escape. And that's what I want us to focus on, is that you see, when we talk about addiction, we talk about drug addiction and substance abuse, we get distracted by the fact that the substance abuse is happening. Now, I know this is going to potentially trigger a few people, but just bear with me. The issue is not about the substance abuse. The substance abuse is in response to what the real issue is. And if we're going to keep focusing on the addiction and the addict and everything else associated with the disruptive behavior and the harmful behavior, we're never ever going to resolve the root cause. And that is why, unfortunately, as much as they're doing their best and they have their place, the recovery rate from rehab centers is extremely low. Extremely, extremely low. It's anything from 1% to a maximum optimistic view of about 20 to 30%. That's it. And the 20 to 30% are doctored figures as well. It's not even figures that you can trust. So we need to question.
Why? what, what did you say? I want to ask you this question, right? What is it that you feel that perhaps they are missing or they are not concentrating on or putting focus on in terms of, rehabilitation? Why is it that our drug rehabs are failing? I hate that word failing, or, not coming right with covering addicts or falling or whatever. Why do you think, what is it that we actually need to be focusing on when it comes to, and I know where you're going to go with this, but obviously I need you to answer for the benefit of our viewers. But yeah, just let us know, what is it that we actually need to be focusing on when dealing with an addict?
We need to understand what is the reason for them becoming addicted, right? So the distraction comes in where they become addicted, and then we focus on all the symptoms of the addiction, all the side effects of the addiction. And yes, we need to, because that's important as well. You can't allow them to just run wild and not do anything about it. But that's not the root cause. What we need to answer is, why is it that they saw drugs as an escape in the first place? What are they trying to escape? Because no one woke up in the morning and decided, I want to become a drug addict today, right? And if they did decide that they wanted to become a drug addict, the reason for them wanting to do that, because everyone knows what the destruction is to the person themselves and to the people around them. We all know it. Even the drug addict knows.
Yeah.
Right? So get them into
100%.
Get them into a sober space, and they'll be able to have a reasonable discussion with you about how it is that they understand exactly what it is that is causing harm to themselves and everyone else. But they can't understand why it is that they can't get rid of it. So what are we
very, very true. And I think, let's just take a step back. When we say, would I be correct in saying we're all substance users? We are all substance users, aren't we? Right? If you are taking a Panado, that makes you a substance user. But what I want to know is, how does it go from substance using to substance abusing, and then eventually to point where it becomes destructive? Because, I've come across people who substance abuse, and they are fully functional people. They're running businesses, they're running their homes, they are in relationships, they are in marriages, they're fine, right? Even though they're substance abusing. But then it gets to a point where it is destructive. What happens? How does it leak from, from the usage to the abuse to the destructiveness? What's going on in between?
I would hazard a guess and say that the difference between the two is that the one who abuses it and is not destructive to the people around them or harmful to the people around them, they've almost internalized the belief that they are just not good enough on their own because of their own inadequacies, because of their own shortcomings, their own insecurities, right? They're not blaming anyone for it. The ones that become harmful towards others and are aggressive and rage at the world when they are abusing substances, they're the ones that believe that they have been done in, they have been shortchanged. Someone has let them down or betrayed their trust or treated them in a way that undermines their significance in their social circle. Those are the ones that become harmful towards others because they're looking for that acknowledgement of the struggle and the insignificance and the insecurity that they're feeling as a result of what they believe to be the behavior of others towards them.
So inevitably, what you're telling me, it starts becoming destructive when they start using the substances to fill in emotional voids that are just not happening in their lives. But is it always the case? Is it always the case? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Not to fill. It's an important point, and that's why I'm interrupting you. Sorry. It's not to fill the void. It's to escape the void that they don't know how to fill.
It's to escape the void that they don't know how to fill.
Oh, yes. Critical difference.
Okay. It's something that I'll have to process. You know me. You say things that make people, I don't know, go back and process like a few times. So this is one of those things that, we'll probably have to go back and probably come back and discuss this again once, because like I said, a lot of what needs to be said, we need to go back and reflect and see how can we, I don't know, join the dots with whoever it is that we are dealing with and things like that there and whatever. The other thing that I want to, talk about is with regards to an addict. And I'm going to put you into a scenario here. Someone comes to you and says, I have a loved one. I want to help this person. I don't know how to do this. I need your guidance. What should I do? Whatever. What is your response to that? What are the steps that you would take as a coach for life? I'm not going to say life coach, coach for life. What are the steps you would take is in, guiding that person and saying, okay, this is how we're going to go about helping ABC.
The only time we've had any meaningful success in being able to curtail the use of drugs is if we had active and meaningful involvement from the support structure around them. And the reason for that is because what is it that the so-called addict, what is it that they're trying to escape? What they're trying to escape is they're trying to escape the fact that they are insignificant to someone or a group that is extremely important to them. But they don't understand why, right? Because if they understood why, they'd be able to deal with that specific issue. But this is something that stems from a very early part of your life where you grow up feeling this inadequacy, feeling this distance, feeling as if you're incomplete in some way. And because of that sense of incompleteness, it drives you insane because you keep looking for validation or you look for inclusion or acceptance of some sort, and you're not getting that form of acceptance that you're looking for. And this is another critical point.
But is it always that reason? Is there always an emotional need that someone is battling with, or whatever it is, that leads them to? Because I hear a lot of people saying that, it started in the party with peer pressure and I was doing it recreationally, and then from there I was always chasing the high. I've heard people say that.
That's exactly where a lot of people like to go, and they say, no, but I was just experimenting and all of that. Okay, yeah. Cool. All right, you were experimenting. Here's the thing. Why was your self-worth so low that you allowed yourself to experiment with something that you knew was detrimental to who you are? Why is it that you allowed yourself to diminish your standing to such a level that you exposed yourself deliberately to harm? That's the question we need to answer. And that self-worth issue, everyone avoids that. Because no one wants to tell someone else how inadequate they feel.
Yeah, no one wants to say, I feel inadequate. No one wants to say that. No one wants to say that, you know what, I diminished myself to the point where I didn't value myself enough to say, heck, no, that's not that's not the path that I want to take, or that's not the decision that's best for me, or whatever it is. No one wants to say that. And it brings me back to a support structure, right? Where you say that, not you say, it's known that the support structures are very, very important, and you see more success stories with people, I don't know, and this is something that I'm in conflict with, because I remember this very, very specifically, and I'm putting myself talk about my personal experience with this, because I remember one day driving with a friend to a rehab center because she needed me to accompany her, and we had we had like this lump in our throats, and we asked each other, is this the right thing that we are doing? We're going every week to see this person, to show our support, to show our love, or are we doing an injustice to ourselves because we're not kind of like standing up for ourselves? Because obviously, right, there is a level of pain. There's a level of pain that family feels when they, when someone is an addict or whatever it is, or substance abusing. There's a lot of pain. I can even say that maybe that experience of dealing with someone who is substance abusing is almost traumatic. I mean, if you talk to parents who have children like this, if you talk to spouses who are dealing with this, it is traumatic. It is painful. There's a sense of anger. There's a sense of mistrust. There's almost like a sense of even deceit, like you lying to me. I don't know. I don't know how to explain those emotions, right? But at the end of the day, we are expected to be the support structure for this person who needs our help, and we kind of like ignoring all of these emotions that we are also going through. And, and then are we doing a service to this person? Are we doing justice to this person? And then I've also seen on the other spectrum of this, the tough love. How
Right.
does that work? How does tough love work in accordance to, being someone's support structure? What goes? Is it unwavering love or is it tough love? Or do we inculcate both and we say we need to, how does that work? Because that's something I couldn't put together.
So here's the problem, right? And the thing is that when we respond to the person who is now at the point of addiction, who is struggling to kick the habit, so to speak, by the time we get to that point, as a support structure, we already feel betrayed by them. It's like, how could you do this to us? Right?
Yes.
But in saying that, the support structures generally want to still, well, try and be supportive, but supportive with conditions, because it's natural. We want to support you as much as we can, but you need to show some interest and some commitment to wanting to be supported. Right?
Right.
It's a two-way street. However, we're solving the wrong problem.
Okay.
Remember I said that they were trying to escape something that they didn't know how to fill. They were trying to escape the feeling of inadequacy, this feeling of distance, of non-acceptance by someone or more than one person in their very close circle, right? The fact that they were a close circle, I've seen this. We've all seen it. You can see the family looks like it's a good family. What went wrong? They get everything they want. They've got good quality of life. They have opportunities. They have supportive parents. Why is it that they still went wrong? Because it's not about any of those things. It's about what is it that we feel we need as an acknowledgement of ourselves, not what we are capable of or what role we play, but who we are. Do we feel as if who we are is visible to the person that is important to us? And more often than not, and I'm not placing blame, please, I'm not placing blame, but more often than not, in fact, in every case that I've worked on myself, in every single instance, the person that was using drugs had an issue with not feeling emotionally accepted by their father.
Particularly a father.
Particularly a father, because there's a very critical role that fathers play compared to mothers. And this is something that we often lose sight of. The mother is the one that gives us a sense of belonging, sense of love, nurturing, and all of that. So we feel like we have somewhere to come home to, right? That's the kind of bond we share with a mother, because that's where we came from, right? But the father gives us a sense of self-worth. If we don't have a healthy relationship with the father, if the father is emotionally inaccessible, we feel as if we are inadequate in meeting their expectations, because everything becomes about what are we able to do, not who we are. And the problem is, when you get to that point, that's what I'm saying, what problem are we trying to solve? The problem we're trying to solve is recognizing that between those two players, the father and the one that is struggling with the addiction, they both don't realize what it is that they need from each other, that both of them are incapable of contributing. We're expecting something that isn't there. We're expecting, for example, our father to express love and affection and openness and emotional accessibility when he doesn't even know how, because he didn't have that experience when he was a child. Are we placing blame? We're not placing blame, not at all. But if we don't understand this dynamic that's at play between the one who is struggling with the addiction and the one who is inaccessible, if we don't understand the dynamics at play there, we're going to keep focusing on the addiction and we're going to be trying to solve the wrong problem. The addiction is an escape. Any addiction is an escape. We have pornography addiction.
Yeah, that is.
Right? So all of these addictions are an escape from what we feel inadequate about in our personal capacity.
You know how I feel about this one. We place, like I said, we place so much of, and I mean, rightly so, because we're there, we want to help someone. That's the whole point of this discussion, is how can we do better, show up better for someone who is obviously struggling like this. And I mean, it doesn't help in any way whatsoever to victimize them or to shame them or to stigmatize them or do all of that, right? But I also feel that from a family's point of view, that some sort of accountability needs to happen with the addict. And I know you're going to, I know you're going to contest me and go, yeah, here you go again. But am I wishful thinking to expect someone who is in that space to have any sense of accountability?
What does the intoxicant do? It diminishes our intellectual capacity.
Okay.
It detaches us from reality. So now we're
Yeah.
asking someone who is detached from reality to show up in reality.
So we shouldn't expect that. Don't
So that's what I'm
expect it.
saying.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying, that the rehabs
I
have a place, right? The rehabs have a place because they have an effective way of getting someone into a sober state. But that's not where it
Right.
stops. Once you have them in a sober state, that's when, those periods of being clean between relapses, that's
Yeah.
the time you really genuinely, meaningfully engage as a support structure and someone that can guide you through the process. That's when you need to meaningfully engage, because that's when you can connect with them and shift their perspective about what they assume to be true.
Okay.
But while
So
while they're in recovery and that, forget it. You're wasting your time if you're trying to reason with someone, even if they've been clean for a week or something. The effects of all of that is still playing through them, and trying to reason with them at that point, they're going to tell you everything you want to hear, and you'll frustrate yourself and you feel betrayed again.
very true. Very true. Okay. So I think this is very, very important, because and very important for a lot of women in particular to understand. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to diminish the experiences of men in any way, but
Mhm.
we know that a lot of women go through this, especially with their spouses. And when we raised this discussion on our platform, a lady in particular said, Hana, I have so many women, so many friends who are in my situation. We have been dealing with husbands or ex-spouses who are on drugs, and we've never recovered from that. They don't know how to trust. There's still all that anger that they're still carrying around, all that resentment, all that, like I said, mistrust, and all that fear as well, because now we don't even know how to navigate through another relationship, because we still have all that baggage. And I think this is what we need to come to as well, we need to discuss, is how does this affect people around the addict? Do they also need assistance in their own way? Like, should they also be seeking counseling, and should they also be forming their own support structures? Who should be there for them?
Absolutely. You see, and this is part of what I'm saying, is that if we're not aware of what problem we're trying to solve, we're going to lose sight of the real issues that come out of all of this and that causes it. And the impact on the people around them, it's massive. It's huge. And if you look at any person that is behaving badly, it's because in some way or another their trust was betrayed, right? How their trust was betrayed, it's not a verbal contract or something that they know about, but there's many ways in which trust is betrayed. And inshallah, one of these days I'll hope to post something about that, because it's an important thing to be aware of. And it's never just about the fact that I expected this from you and you didn't do it, and you knew I was expecting from you and now you betrayed my trust. It's not about that. It's much deeper than that. The thing is, the people that are affected by it, they feel equally betrayed. And if they don't understand why that betrayal actually happened, or why they feel that betrayal, or even the fact that it's betrayal that's making them angry, if they don't understand how to process that and how to reconcile it with what's actually happening, they're going to be searching for answers. And when you don't get those answers and you're faced with a similar problem, or any problem that has just some of the signals of what you dealt with before, guess what? Trigger point. And then you explode again. And then your next partner will have to deal with what it is that you didn't resolve from your previous relationship. It has to
So
be.
it is equally, yeah, I think it is, we need to put out there that it is equally important for families and friends who are dealing with such a situation to also seek counsel, to also seek help, apart from just showing up for the one who needs help. And I think that's really, really important. And I don't know, to all the women who are listening to this and who are going through this, and who still feel all of these emotions and things like that, they what is it that you want to tell them? What is it that you would advise that they do going forth? And I don't know, coming to terms maybe of what has happened, or what they experience, because for a lot of us, for a lot of people, let's not say us, okay, for a lot of people, a lot of people have lived sheltered lives as such, okay, and then suddenly a lot, like you said, right? And we try to pretend that these things are not happening until it whacks you and it's knocking on your door, and all of a sudden it's your reality, and you never ever thought that it's going to be your reality because you were living such a sheltered life. And I think I can speak for a lot of women when I say that it's a reality that a lot of us feel angry because we've been exposed to something that we were not ready to be exposed to, or we didn't expect to be exposed to that reality. And then there's the children that are involved in there as well, and they are exposed to that reality as well. And then you get us caught in between in trying to protect them and trying to be supportive to the spouse or this brother or this father or whoever it is, or even a mother or even a sister, because it's not just men who are substance abusing. It's definitely not only boys and men. It's definitely ladies. It's definitely old ladies. It's definitely young girls and all of that, right? So, and we're trying to protect children. How do we go about with all of this? How do we go about? How do we form a structure for this family? Let's put a family in this situation, right? How do we form a structure for this family where everyone is getting what they need?
Okay, so the most important thing for anyone that's affected by a partner that is or that they were involved with, it was substance abusing. The first thing you need to remember is that even though the problem may have manifested within your relationship, that is not the root cause, right? Because what happens is that, and this is something that happens often, is that I get a lot of people saying that, but we were fine and then suddenly he just changed. Someone doesn't just change unless what they think is expected of them provokes them towards a change. And most importantly, what happens now is that there's two very common trigger points at which someone who is already in that emotionally volatile space will be given towards going towards drugs. The first one is when they get married, not before they get married, not the courtship, after they get married. Because the expectation of them to show up as a husband, as a provider, as a role model in a certain way, that expectation is what nails them. And that's when the feelings of inadequacy and insignificance and just completely being not enough, that's when it hits them to a point where they need to shut it out and then they try to escape. That's the one trigger point. The other trigger point that happens very often is when they are faced with the news that they are going to become a father. Because now they're faced with the responsibility of showing up for another human being when they didn't know how to do that, because they feel as if what they needed when they were that innocent, they didn't get what they needed. So again, it's the shift in expectation of them, what we demand of them, just purely through the mechanics of relationships, what the demands that are placed on them or what they place on themselves that drives them towards this emotionally volatile space, right? So that's the one thing you need to realize when you're faced with this, right? Is that if you're gonna be looking for answers about the dynamic between you and your partner, you're looking in the wrong place. The second thing that happens often is that because of the amount of attempts that we make at trying to resolve this, at trying to help them, at trying to break the cycle and all of those things, at trying to give them more reason to see the value of what they have so that they won't be ungrateful for it and go to drugs, and all of those things that play out. And the one thing someone
Mm,
posted a comment earlier on this live about the issue of Iman. Yes, low Iman and all of that, but that doesn't solve the problem. Understanding why our Iman is low is what we need to get to. Not judging people for having low Iman, all right? But we'll come back to that another time, inshallah. The thing is, when you go through these cycles of trying to assist, you need to recognize that each time you learn something new and you try a new approach, you can't hold it against them that you already had 3 attempts or 4 attempts or 5 attempts. And the reason for this is because each of those attempts were obviously not addressing the right issue, which is why it wasn't successful. So as much as we talk about sabr and everything else, we need to be practical about what it is that we're expecting from the person that is abusing and from ourselves. And that is that when you come across new information, you come across new insights, new perspectives, understand that that must be given a fair opportunity to succeed by committing to that process and not getting frustrated because of all the past processes that you failed at already. And that is something that may ground you to the point where it will improve your resilience to be able to see it through and hopefully, inshallah, find a successful outcome.
this is something that okay, let's not be wet blankets with regards to, let's say there is hope. There is hope. I'd like to give a sense of, there is hope for everyone. And at the end of the day, you hear a lot of stories uh we see, like we've already mentioned, we see that our rehab facilities are not making the progress that they should be making, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, hidayah is from Allah, and we can hope, and we can always make dua and show up the best way we can, and have the understanding that we need to have in order to be the show, like I said, I don't know, show up for the people who need us. What I want to ask you also is that this, because someone is talking about food addiction and it's distracting me because maybe I'm an addict of food. Okay. Um, in this particular discussion, we're not going to talk about all the other addictions. I think we want to focus on drug addiction because I feel that is one of the, like you said, it is very destructive and tearing our communities apart and our families apart and stuff. Talking about communities, this particular problem, is it subjective to a specific race, a specific religion, a specific demographic? And I know the answer to it. I just need you to answer me with that. Because does it discriminate, or are we finding people? And I'm going to get back to this low iman thing that someone posted. Does it discriminate? We are seeing people from all walks of life being affected by drug addiction.
So I just want to very quickly respond to this issue about low iman, right? Because it touches on all of the other things that you're asking me about.
Yeah.
The question we need to ask ourselves is, why do we find it more convenient to judge the behavior of the addict rather than trying to understand why they're doing it? Because it's convenient. And the reason why we find it easy to judge is because it abdicates responsibility on our part to be part of the solution. It's not my fault. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. They have weak iman. They're not making the salah. They're not reading Quran. They don't have a good relationship with Allah. They're ungrateful. The moment we keep doing all of that,
let's rabbit hole this very quickly, right? Let's go a bit into this one. Is it safe to say, because I posted this the other day, and someone came with a quite a pertinent point and said, when I pinpointed all the telltale signs of how we can figure out if someone is using or whatever it is, right? And this person said, well, those are signs of someone with psychological issues, with mental health issues, right? And I thought to myself, okay, but is there usually a case of depression with an addict?
oh boy, mental health. I try to I tried to find a definition for mental health the other day because we talk about it so much. And I wanted to see what do we
Yeah.
define as mental health, right? And it's so vague that it actually means nothing because it's about how we deal with life in a nutshell. I'm not going to go into the technicalities. It's about how we deal with
Mm.
life. So here's the question. Is everyone's life so similar that there's only one healthy way to deal with it? When we start worrying about mental health this and mental health that, and we start worrying about depression and everything else, we lose sight of the human experiencing that emotion. So this is not the time to have the debate about mental illness and everything else, but just if anything you can take away from this today is that when you're focusing on trying to understand why someone is behaving badly, and substance abuse is just an extreme form of bad behavior, understand that no one, and I mean no one, behaves badly if they feel appreciated. Now here's the thing. If you're going to assume that your contribution towards them should be enough for them to feel gratitude, you're assuming that your presence in their life that they feel is not adequate. That's causing them to behave badly. But if they feel as if they're not being appreciated by someone more important than you, like a father figure or a mother figure, or it could be even someone else that's really important because of the circumstances of their life, if they feel unappreciated by that pivotal role in their life, you're going to be trying to solve a problem that you are incapable of solving because it's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I think for a lot of us, it's difficult, but we have to try. Like, remove yourself, try and remove your emotions out of the situation and focus on what that person is
Right.
experiencing and going through and all of that, and try and understand. Am I right?
What's
Just putting it
required?
in a
What's
nutshell.
required? What is the minimum requirement for you to be able to achieve that? Your self-worth needs to be in a healthy place. If you
Yeah.
already have a problem with your own self-worth, you're going to be looking for validation from someone who is looking for validation from someone else. You
But
just
I
become
think this is why it becomes such why the situation is so toxic and why it actually tears family apart and why it tears marriages apart. It's because I think it creates so much of that toxicity, right? I know so many women will be like you couldn't choose that over me. Like you couldn't say no to that for me. Like, was his love not greater for me? Like, is he not afraid to lose me? Is he
why
not
am I
afraid to lose his family? Is he not afraid to? Why am I even showing up for this person in the first place? Or why should I even be a support structure for this person when he cannot say no to that and take care of me and the family or whatever it is? So I mean, these are genuine raw emotions and conversations that people often have with themselves, and I'm going to put it out there because that is what actually goes on in the heads of wives, spouses,
agree?
family members, whatever.
And I want to remind everyone listening in, I want to remind them about one very important point on this issue is that when you have those internal conversations, you need to remember that the person who is addicted to drugs or is abusing substances or is having bad behavior, they more often than not, in fact, I would go in as far as saying that the fact that they resorted to drugs to escape in the first place means that every single time they're not aware of what it is that really makes them feel inadequate. They just know they feel inadequate. And it's not because of the current relationship they're in. The current relationship is only revealing their inadequacies to themselves. It's only triggering them. It's only provoking them in spaces that they already feel as if they're not good enough in. And because of the demand of them to show up in a certain way in that relationship, they'll project their anger and their rage on the relationship because they don't know why it is that they just don't know how to deal with that expectation.
Hmm. You know, yeah, you're talking and I'm thinking 10 million thoughts. Because I remember posting about this, one of the reasons why someone would often use is the demands of, what was it? It was the demands of work grueling work hours where they need to stay awake. Okay, am I back? Are we back? Because I kind of like went off there. Okay, so yeah, I posted about that people will often use to help cope with the grueling hours that they face probably at work or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
yeah, for them to function in a certain manner, right? And I don't know if you've heard about this, but I'm hearing a lot of stories where, and a lot of people coming forth with girls being, well, students, right, being addicted to performance enhancing drugs to help them cope at varsity with their studies and to keep them sharp throughout the night to study or whatever it is. And what's up with that? Because is now, we're talking so much about self-worth, and we're trying to, people are using drugs to avoid this and that and whatever. What happens in this case? How do we understand this? What is going on here? Is it again a matter of self-worth where they're thinking, look, I'm not good enough to do this without drugs, so I need to take, is it that? Is that the thought process that's going on there?
It is. What happens is that you end up packing so much of insecurities into the back of your mind about your ability and the expectation of you and who you're going to let down and all of these things, that it wears you out before you even get to the point of actually what you need to do. So because you're already looking at what you need to do and you're thinking, I have to get this right. If I don't get this right, this is the consequence. This is the impact. This is the person that's going to be disappointed in me. This is the response I'm going to get from my parents. Because of all of that, your self-worth, forget it. Your self-worth is defined by how other people see you. It's not defined on what you think of yourself. And the moment you're in that space, you're going to need something to help you get through the day. And because it's so accessible, because you can go into a supermarket and pick up energy drinks and other performance enhancers and things like that, because it's so accessible, we assume that because it's not a controlled substance, it must be okay.
Now let's just go into a bit of that. There's a lot of parents that are listening to us, and we've already established that addiction isn't just that of drugs, okay? It can be medication, someone said food, it can be whatever, okay? And there's accessibility. It's so easy. I can go to the pharmacy and I can pick up whatever I want over the counter. I can get onto prescription medication, and you hear people are addicted to that sort of stuff. And we have the famous antidepressants, which a lot of people are addicted to, right? What is your advice for parents out there in terms of how to be on top of the situation? Is there a way for us to be on top of the situation with regards to our children? How can we show up with our kids, where we can see or be observant of what they're doing? Or, we don't want these things to slide under our nose one day, and then when they 20 something realize, shucks, what did I miss? Where did I miss this? And inshallah, that's never the reality for any of us listening to this. But yeah, what is your advice going forward? Like, what would you advise us, as parents, like, what should we look out for?
As parents, we need to be real with ourselves first. We need to come to terms with our own insecurities and our fears, right? And the moment we see that we're tending towards insisting on compliance, on discipline, on conformance to specific expectations, and our response to non-conformance and non-compliance and poor discipline is a punitive response rather than one of understanding. We need to realize that we, as parents, in our individual capacity as humans, we have our own shortcomings that we need to come to terms with. See, you can't give what you don't have. As a parent, you won't be able to give that emotional accessibility to your child that they need if you believe you are inadequate in your own way.
So I'm going to stop you right there. The first point is that you're saying, as parents, we need to be emotionally accessible to our children.
Yeah.
Right. Get that loud and clear. Right? We need to be emotionally accessible to our children. I think that is a very good, vital point. Because I think that a lot of us miss that, and then we when we're not accessible to our children, then obviously our children are going to gravitate towards other things where they can find answers. If it's not people, then it's going to be other sorts of avenues where they're going to experiment and try and even find relevance. Am I right? Sometimes they experiment with drugs because they try to find relevance within that space, within their friends and stuff like that.
We're just looking for
Am I, yeah. So I think for us parents, to create that proclivity to be in that space with us is very, very important. They should want to be in that space with us. They should find that relevance with us.
Right. But this reminds me of two very important points, and we probably need to wrap up. I think we're over time. Two very important points. The one is, I think there's that famous quote from Ali radiallahu anh, if I'm not mistaken, that says that your children were created for a time different from your own, so don't expect them to behave the way you did. Right? Something along those lines.
Yes.
The problem is, we'll see that as a threat if we, in our own capacity, are insecure. So we'll try to make sure that they do things according to the value system we were raised within the context of how we lived that value system, because we think kids nowadays, they just don't know what's good for them. Right? That's one thing. The other one is a slightly more contentious one. And this is a topic that comes up often, and especially in the case of substance abuse, and I think it's critical that we start realizing this. I have often had discussions with a lot of very learned people about why is it that I can't find any references in the Sunnah about how to discipline my child. Go and do the research. If you find a hadith that tells you this is how you must respond to bad behavior from your child, please share it. And the only answer I can come up with is this. The Sunnah will not give us a remedy for something that if we followed the Sunnah, that problem would not exist. I'm talking of personal conduct. I'm not talking of social justice, right? So what we need to realize is that when we resort to the point of focusing on discipline and punitive responses to every single thing that our children do that is not in our towards our liking, we need to realize that our ability to influence them from a position of value and wisdom and understanding, our ability to influence them is lacking. And the reason it's lacking is because we haven't connected with them adequately. That's why the emotional accessibility is so important. When you become emotionally accessible, you are able to deal with things in a more gentler, more compassionate, more understanding manner. But you can't do that if you feel threatened by the need for that emotional accessibility from others.
And should we be having these discussions with our children? Should we be talking about when should we be having these discussions with our children? At what age would it be suitable? Is there an age suitable to have these discussions with our children?
The more important thing is, why is it that we have a separate place and time that we want to set aside for these discussions, as opposed to having such a healthy and meaningful relationship with our children that this is part of the way we engage?
100%. 100%. You know, someone came to me and said, how do I talk to my children about LGBTQ, whatever? So I said, it's going to be so awkward for you to say, child, come sit here, I need to talk to you about something. Even that child's going to feel awkward or whatever it is. And you're going to end up making it seem like such a contentious discussion or whatever it is, that they're probably going to have such an unhealthy mindset about it going forth. So yeah, I think it all boils down to how we are emotionally connecting with our children, and that cannot happen if we are not doing the work with ourselves.
Yes, but we need to first become aware of what it is that we need to do for ourselves. We're not going to become aware of it if we're going to assume that because we're parents, we must be right.
Right, 100%. Okay, like you said, we need to wrap it up. I did not allocate any time frame for this, but maybe you need to go and do something better.
Not better, but I've got commitments, and it's over an hour.
Of course. I'm just troubling you. If there's anything that I have missed, because I mean, I had a script with all the things that I needed to discuss and blah blah blah. I completely went against it. But if there's anything that I have missed, please feel free to add on right now and say whatever it is that you feel that we still need to speak about quickly?
I think this is the beginning of an important discussion. It's not the complete discussion. I
Yeah.
think if we do this as a once-off, if it's going to be another one-hit wonder kind of thing for these kinds of discussions, we just play to the very stigma that we think we're going to break, right?
Yeah.
So we need to have more open, engaging, meaningful, non-judgmental discussions about the difficulties that we're facing as an ummah and as a community. And the South African Muslim community has got some pretty unique challenges that is recognized worldwide as being unique to this community. And we need to understand that. And we need to understand that the context within which we grew up, and I'm talking of my generation, I'm showing my age, the context within which we grew up is very, very different to the context within which our children are growing up. What we saw as a worldview when we were teenagers was extremely limited and myopic. What they see as a worldview now as toddlers is probably more than we saw as teenagers because of the pervasiveness of social media and news and information that is so readily available.
Yeah.
And if we're not going to equip ourselves as parents to be able to deal with that reality rather than focusing on compliance and you will or else in halal and haram, and if you don't do this, you're going to go to Jahannam and those sorts of things, that is not going to establish understanding. That means we're consistently raising with fear as the motivator and not with understanding as the motivator. And that's something that we need to think.
And your words to someone who might be watching this who is struggling with addiction would be?
Understand why. You need to seek to understand why you feel as if you are out of control. The reason you feel you are out of control is because you've been looking for the answers all the time in the same ways, in the same places, and you need to shift. You need to change that. We can't keep looking for answers in the same place and expect it to suddenly appear because that's not where the answers are. So if you've been struggling all the time to find the answers and you don't find the answers, it means that you need to look somewhere else. And the more you expose yourself to new perspectives, new understandings, the more you reflect and you try to understand what it is that's driving you and understand why it is that you feel inadequate, the stronger your chances of being able to connect with the value of who you are. And then you truly connect with that sense of gratitude that Allah talks about in the Quran.
And you cannot do any of that if you are under the influence or doing things that hampers your sense of your sense of understanding and your sense of, what did we say, any sort of intoxicants that take you out of your ability to think rationally is.
Yeah, the problem is when you're in that state, more often than not, if not all the time, by the time you return to a sober state, you forget what it was that you actually did or encountered during that time. So even if you come up with this epiphany and you really, really connect with the truth of why it is that this is the reason why you want to turn your life around, guess what? By the time you become sober and you become clean, poof, gone. Don't know what it was.
Yeah. And lastly, your advice to the community. What is it that we need to do? What is it that is needed of us as a community? Because the Ummah is one body, am I right? What affects one should affect us all. Just because it's happening in someone else's house doesn't mean it is not our problem. Just because it is happening to someone else's child doesn't mean that we need to distance ourselves or whatever it is. What is it that you want to say to that?
We need to stop focusing on the rituals of the Sunnah, and we need to start focusing on establishing the character of the Sunnah in our life. The character of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, not just his ways and his methods and his rituals. No, not just the traditions. When we look at the wisdom with which he responded, we need to understand what informed his wisdom to respond in that way and not try to mimic the response only. And when we start doing that, we'll find it that much more difficult to judge someone when they behave badly instead of trying to understand why they're behaving that way so that we can resolve the vulnerability that they feel that drives them to behave badly in the first place.
Okay. I'm going to wrap it up now. I'm going to say Jazakallah so much for joining us once again and for making the time. for our viewers. And I hope, inshallah, that we can do a follow up to this, because there's still so much to discuss. There's really so much. And we don't want this to be one of those discussions that we just, threw out there and then let people take what they will, whatever it is. We want to be there. And, we want to follow up with this. And if anybody does require any assistance, they can contact you. How do they call you? What do they do?
The easiest is I'm on social media, so on Instagram, but I've got a website. It's zaidismail.com. Hopefully easy enough to remember. And yeah, my contact details are there. Even on my homepage, on my website, there's a WhatsApp button, so they can drop me a WhatsApp message, and we can make time to have a discussion, inshallah.
Okay. All right. Jazakallah so much. Jazakallah for all those who has joined us. I'm going to save this so whoever has missed it can come back to it and watch it whenever it is most convenient. Jazakallah Zaid. Enjoy the rest of your day and your evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.